We are live. Rock and roll. What's up, Joe? I was actually just reading your thing over on the Aussie channel. Trying to figure out what's going on over there. And what's going on at 619? Good to see you guys. Yeah, that is on my list of things to discuss on today's State of the Network. I think we got a couple things to hit. Let me see if I can bring in Max. I know he had talked about coming on today. There he is, man, myth, the legend. Let me get it queued up here. What's up, Max?
Hey, 1 second. I'm trying to get the audio on my.
All right. Well, you're live, so just don't go taking your pants off.
Oh, we're live?
We're live. Yeah, we're there. If you want, I can pull you off. So let's see. Hey, what's up, Lee? What's up, Jay? Good to see you guys. Today I had to discuss the Aussie thing, the big vote that's coming up. I know that is. It seems like it's not contentious in Australia, but outside of Australia, there are some concerns about it having an effect on the global network. I was trying to get Disc 91 Paul to come on to talk about that because I didn't fully understand what he meant by it. But dude's sharp, and if he's got a problem with it, there's probably a problem with it. And then Max, we wanted to talk about, what was it, the intersection at hip 80 and hip 51, and you had some funny analogy or metaphor you were telling me yesterday. So let's start with that. Well, actually, let's start with what's going on, dog. You got some hockey stuff in the background. How you doing?
Yeah, I got a Peloton that I don't use in the background too.
Okay.
All right, these headphones aren't working. Hold on. There we go.
All right. You got your People's Antenna shirt on, representing. Should I put Max at People instead of Gold Hawks?
Yeah, don't Quan.
Don't Quan. Okay. Nice.
Yeah, no. So Hip 51 had a slight problem where we overlooked the onboarding fees for mobile hotspots. Couple of things. Is it a mobile gateway that should be onboarded? Is it the radio that should be onboarded? My position is the radio.
Hang on. Let's back up and make sure we're setting the stage here. So Hip 51 was passed a couple of months ago, if not more. And the idea was that it was setting Helium up to be able to add multiple different technologies in the form of networks to the Helium ecosystem. So obviously Helium starts with LoRa, CBRS comes along, commonly called 5G. There's Wi-Fi on the horizon. There's this, that, and the other. And so the idea initially was like, hey, let's set this thing up so that you can add all these different networks in and they can somehow coexist. Is that,
Yep.
am I getting it right? Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's right. And essentially, if we back up a little bit further, there was HIP 37, which tried to fit the 5G within the Helium ecosystem in terms of proof of coverage rewards and how those got broken up.
Okay.
So there was a huge debate, obviously, over what percentage is correct, because no one wants to give up their HNT rewards to another network and what's fair and all that. And, you have unfair voting when one group of people holds way more tokens than the other group of people. People often vote within their own self-interest, which, obviously, rather than, in the interest of maybe a long-term goal because they may lose tokens. So essentially, HIP 37 never made it through, didn't work because there was too much ad hoc kind of negotiations that had to go on and numbers that had to be chosen that no one could really agree on. So enter HIP 51, where it created a scale where it took the number of devices you had on your network multiplied by the amount that it costs to onboard those devices, the amount of data going through your device, all your devices within a network, and then also kind of the network sentiment. That's VE stakers have the ability to delegate their HNT, essentially voting towards a sub-DAO, saying that they think that's worthwhile. The really nice thing about that, while it's not perfect, it allows for a new network to come in, and we say, listen, here are the rules. Here are the ways that you can improve your sub-DAO's value. But there's no negotiation that has to go on. There's nothing. It's just, here's what your numbers are. Here's what you get.
Right.
And that was a really elegant solution. Again, not perfect. There's some couple of holes in there, but for the most part, it was really good. One of those holes was onboarding mobile hotspots. No one ever onboarded mobile hotspots. My understanding is there was a technical reason where you couldn't double onboard a hotspot, so there was no HNT that was burned to onboard the mobile gateways. Now, there wasn't a way to onboard them for both networks.
Okay.
Since the mobile gateways do both Helium 5G and Helium LoRa, um, it was assumed that everything kind of went towards the LoRa because it is a LoRa gateway. So that was kind of where we were. We assumed that it was going to be a one-to-one, like people were going to get one gateway, one radio. Well, that's not the case. Right now, there's about 50% of the LoRa gateways, or the 5G gateways, are only operating on the LoRa network. They don't have any radios attached to them. And then on top of that, the average LoRa gateway, 5G gateway has about 3 radios connected to it. And when you think about the economics of it, a radio is indoor radio. I think it's like 1,500. Outdoor radio is about 2,500. And then the bigger ones, I think those are about 4,500. So it doesn't really make sense if you're trying to capture the value of a network for it to just be based on like a gateway when that doesn't really,
Reflect
encapsulate
the number of radios that come in. Yep. Okay.
Right. So that's the problem that's trying to be solved. The solution to it, to me, is simple. You come up with a minimum on board, you burn that HNT, and then everything is fine. It's actually happened in the past. I think it was like December of 2020. There was an issue where a bunch of the CalChip Connect rack hotspots didn't have any onboarding for them, and then there was a one-time burn for all the DC that needed to be burned to get all those hotspots onboarded. So there actually is like precedent for this in the network, which is interesting. So yeah, it should be a simple, like the mobile sub down needs to figure out, okay, we never onboarded our radios. How do we onboard our radios? Okay, let's do it. 𝗵𝗵𝗀 has a measure in there where if you don't onboard your radios, it's a formula. So you take the number of radios or number of gateways, however you want to count it, and then you multiply that by the onboarding fee. In this case, would be 0, and then you get, your number of 0.
Yep.
And then in that formula, there's a max of 1, so that no single number can turn you into a 0. So that active device number would just be worth 1, and that would be it. And that's the penalty. It was set up that way. Like if we moved to Solana today and nothing happened, everything would work, nothing would break. Sub down is going to 1 for that score. In comparison, the LoRa or the IoT sub down would get like a 63.24, I think is the number. So it's like a huge disadvantage for mobile to sit on their hands and not do anything.
All right. And then what's the 𝗵80 thing? What's the intersection there? Because 𝗵51 sounds like it's a reasonably, maybe some holes in there, but are like a reasonable thing. But I know you're having some problems with 𝗵80. Walk me through that.
Right. So 𝗵80, essentially what it's doing is it's trying to solve that problem of no onboards by getting rid of the score and then adding a couple of other things on top of it that don't really make sense in the scheme of like we're just trying to make a quick change so that everything works pre-migration, so that nothing breaks post-migration. Okay. And then my biggest problem with it is we're using the, hey, migration's coming up, we need to get this done fast, to pass these other things that don't actually matter. I think I used the gate analogy with you where it's like,
yeah, because I've been fixing my gate, I've been fixing fences. Max knows this, so he's walking me through it in terms I can understand. But that was useful.
Yeah. So your gate is a little bit creaky, and your mother-in-law is coming over tomorrow, so you got to fix it. But instead of doing that, you just get rid of your whole gate, and now you don't have to worry about the creaky gate. Like that doesn't really make sense. And it's like, your wife's like, well, should we be doing this? It's like, shut up. We're going to do it right now because she's coming over tomorrow, and I don't want a creaky gate. So like, you can just put some oil on the gate and fix that, and then have more time to kind of understand, like, do we want to fix the gate? Like, maybe we want a different gate. Maybe we want to upgrade our gate. Yeah, but like, to just blow everything up because we have to solve a problem makes no sense to me.
Okay, cool. Thanks, man. Dig it.
Yeah.
Let's see. You haven't paid attention to the Australian thing, right?
Everyone is very spirited on the Australian thing. I don't know who to believe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I was actually thinking about this morning, Max. Is Joe, who was on here before, Network Bits Crypto, had made a comment over on the Australian Discord about, well, it's something like all crypto discords are toxic and helium is super toxic, and he is also not sure who to believe. And he was saying that I'm Gristle King is one of the only people, only the only builders in the helium space who has like good relationships with the helium head shed. And so I wanted to make sure that I don't think that's totally true. I think there's lots of builders who have great relationships with the helium head shed. But I really wanted to dive in, and if you got to bounce, Max, you can bounce. But I want to dive in this like relationship idea. And as funny as it sounds in this like super techno world of helium, where everything is about blockchain, it's supposed to be trustless and permissionless, and you don't have to like the other person, and what you wear or what you do doesn't matter. Like what goes into the blockchain is what matters, or what the thing does matters. I think we're seeing that not really play out, in that a lot of these relationships are the things that are driving the network forward, or causing problems with it. And I think one thing I'm seeing with the way that a couple of the strident Aussies have approached this has really shot themselves in the foot. They've been unnecessarily abrasive. And I think it's like, look, if you feel this passionately about it, you obviously have something that you're probably right about. But being super abrasive about it doesn't help. And so it just made me think, like, as much as we want to get away from having relationships and those being important and having kind of human interactions, we're not there yet. It's still pretty important to make sure that we keep up a civil discourse, and that, I know that you've been on the edge of this sometimes. Like you get pretty heated. But at the end of the day, we're all aiming for this thing to work, and we're all exploring this new place. And it's still pretty important to be kind and to, seek to understand the other side. So.
Oh, and I don't view the heated discourse as a bad thing. Like, people care. That's great. That's awesome. And people
Sure.
are like spending hours of their time for free to go back and forth on something. Like, that's actually a good sign. It's way worse if no one cares and no one says anything. I've been a part of other projects where,
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
no one cares, and those projects don't exist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I want to give full credit to the Aussies. Like, obviously they care. They're still engaging. Like they're not walking away from this thing, and they want it to work just as much as anyone else. It's just figuring out the thing that will work. But yeah. I mean, I think I'm in a similar boat to you, as like, man, why are you so upset about something, and why is there such a problem here? Like, it must be that it's a thorny issue, and there's not an easy solution. It's just like the whole Israel-Palestine thing. Like, every asshole in the street's like, oh, it would just be fixed if these guys did one thing or that guy did one thing. It's like, it's like a 2,000-year-old conflict. It's probably something we're not going to solve overnight. And I don't want to equate that to this, but when the conflicts are kind of this great and you got both sides so upset about it, it's probably worth like stepping back and trying to figure out, like, all right, where's the ground we can meet on.
Right, and yeah, for some reason, and this happens a lot. This is an Australia thing. Like, people often think that for some reason someone is going after them in particular with the decision they make, and a lot of the times it's either they may have overlooked something, or they have some reason why they think this way is better, and it has nothing to do with like any group of people or any other particular person. It's just what they feel is best, and we're kind of a level enterprise here where everyone is kind of at the same level. Everyone has the ability to write a HIP, propose any changes they want. So when having certain people are either going to want to act in their best interest or act in what they think is the best. But I mean, a lot of these things, like if you're in San Francisco and you're deciding things about Australia, like, you have an idea of what's going on. You may not have the full picture, and so it's valuable for those people to voice their concerns. But at the same time, there could be some business reason why, and I don't know, I'm just making up a scenario here. There could be some business reason why the other choice is better. So a lot of times we have people arguing with each other when they don't have the same set of data and same set of information. So yeah, a lot of this is, I think, misunderstandings a lot too.
Yeah, it's just like seek to understand the other side, see what they're getting and not getting, and then go from there. Cool. Let's see. So the Aussie vote, and if the Aussies are here, you guys can jump in. Tell me our styling, because I don't always remember every name on there. And then I'm agreeing with Siegfried. I don't think the Helium Discord is super toxic. I think it's actually one of the better Discords out there for crypto projects, and definitely there's only a small amount of people who have. I like how you said that, a problematic communication style. Yeah, like most people are just willing to work and build stuff.
Yeah, Nick, we even talked about this last night. I was like, I think part of the problem is, like, I think I'm misunderstood in the way I type versus the way I talk.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm sure I definitely come off as abrasive sometimes when I'm typing. So
yeah.
yeah, I just
Dumpling girl thinks so. She's here. I'm giving you and her a hard time. Let's see. We talked about hip 80 issues. This is something that is totally outside of your give a shit about Max, but I had this idea, and I think it's been said to me on the show before. It's definitely not my idea, but it suddenly hit me this week. Was that using Neil's TrackPack Trilateration or uplink engine or whatever is out there, you can you can figure out the location of any device on the Helium network just because it's sending out a signal and you're reading that signal at a given signal strength. And if you have enough hotspots around it, you can actually pretty accurately assess where it is down to a couple hundred meters. And that was like, huh. It made me start to think when I send someone a package with a Helium device in it. Like I just sent this guy who does a bunch of sprinkler stuff. I just sent him a soil moisture sensor, and I turned it on before I sent it and sent it out to him. It's like, oh, you don't need another tracker in that package. You can use the Helium thing itself to track the package. And it made me think about the way the world is going to work when we have all of these different, I don't know, dimensions, or what are they called? Vector embeddings, if you want to use a fancy AI word. And I like my fancy AI shit. Yeah, it's like all of a sudden the world is really starting to open up. And that was in part in response to this idea like, oh, we're in this crypto winter and, nothing's happening. It's like, no, there's lots of things happening right now. There's lots of people thinking about how to view the world and, change it.
yeah. So one thing on that, and Neil can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that works really well in a place like London where there's tons of saturation.
Yeah.
When you don't actually know where anyone is because you're hoping that they confirm it themselves and they don't lie. I think in some of these areas where there's less saturation, I don't know how well that trilateration works. And again, Neil can probably correct me if I'm wrong if you don't have a certain number. So what's interesting though is with the secure concentrators, being able to have way more confidence in the location of some of them to then use that for trilateration. And then on top of that, I look at 𝗬𝗄, which is trying to make an unspoofable addition to a hotspot. Like that could be so unbelievably powerful if we can actually know the location of all of these hotspots and then make our trilateration that much better.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's it. Obviously, or not obviously. The other thing that is super cool about these different networks is we start to see interactions between all of the different networks out there and how they work together. I know you and I are both excited about both our clients, the 𝗬𝗄 and React Energy. Just like, oh, how do these things start to interact with Helium so that you're transferring information over Helium, you're proving where something is with 𝗬𝗄, and then we're watching what's going on with power grids with React. And those are just three projects out of the hundreds that are out there. So pretty cool stuff there. What else did I have for notes on this day? And I'll tell you, if you're watching this and you have governance questions, I don't think there's a better person to answer the questions than Max. I could be wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of shit, but if you have governance questions about what's going on, this is a great time to ask it. Last thing I had, like a really simple thing was 12 versus 24 word wallets. I'm getting a bunch of questions on those. Like, should I convert my 12 word to a 24 word? Is it more secure? I don't think you can do that. And I don't think, I'm sure some crypto guy will correct me on this. And clearly 24 words is more secure than 12, but I don't see a huge reason to use a 24 word wallet if you're just a normal person with a normal amount of HNT. If you've got a couple $1 million worth of HNT and you're really worried about it and you're banking on that to pay your mortgage, maybe a 24 word wallet is a thing, but I don't know. What are you using, Max? Just
Oh no, I don't want to steal my HNT. I use the Blue Wallet app. I still haven't converted. Don't tell
Max, come on, dude. Oh, if you haven't converted, shit, there's a problem.
It's really annoying. Every time I try to make a payment, they tell me hey, can you please transfer over to the new one? I was like, oh yeah. If you just hit OK, then it lets you just use the wallet as normal.
Well, Joey, if you're watching this, and I know eventually you will, note that one of our Prime users is still on the Blue app. So you got to switch over, dude.
Well, April 18th, I think they're going to force me to switch over.
Yeah. Let's see. Jeremy Cooper, our technical wizard. How is GeoNet going to help find positions of hotspots? Is they're using the base stations issuing out an RTK stream, and that I think we talked about that, Jeremy, up in San Francisco. This idea of it being unspoofable, and if you have your own network, you have access to what is it, the ephemeral before anyone else, and so you can prove that someone else around you is spoofing, and then attaching that to a hotspot. I think that's still, it's not something that's going to happen on Tuesday. That's still something in the works. But I think what Max and I are seeing is across these different networks, like, oh, you can use the technological advantage of one network to improve another network, and that kind of cross pollinate. So, yeah.
It actually brings up a good point about what would you wish you had done if you checked your wallet, it was zero. Yeah, I actually just I was kind of joking around. Everything I have is on a secure like thumb drive, and I use the CLI wallet, so that's why I haven't actually updated the app.
Oh.
Yes, good crypto security is very important. So, like, I agree. It doesn't hurt you to upgrade to 24 words. So, yeah, I think that's a way better move.
Yeah. I don't think you can upgrade to 24 words. Like, you can't have, maybe I'm wrong on this. Jeremy probably knows. You can either have a 12 word or you change over and you send all your HNT to a 24 word wallet. I don't.
Right.
Technically
so,
wrong.
like, if I got a new phone, I'm upgrading my phone. So, like, you get a new wallet with the 24 words.
You could do. You'd have a new wallet. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. 𝗚𝗵𝘁𝗀𝗏. This is the thing you just said. What would you wish you had done if you checked your wallet balances? There, like, I don't know. Wish that I wouldn't have given my 12 words up to the scammers. I don't know of any instance where a scammer has successfully cracked a 12-word wallet without having access to the 12 words. I don't think that's happened. I think there's a lot of stuff where, and myself included, we've fallen for these tricks where you give up your 12 words, and that is, there's no security measure that will prevent against someone else having your PIN when you give it to them, or your personal stuff when you give it to them. But yeah, you just got to be careful about that. Let's see. Oh, Cyber Farm. So what's all the money going to that was invested into Helium? Is there a breakdown posted somewhere? That seems like a question for you, Max. You usually pay attention to this stuff.
Yeah, so that money went to Helium Inc., which is a private company now known as 𝗨𝗏. And what they're doing with that money is none of our business. I'm assuming a lot of that money is going towards starting up their MVNO. But yeah, it's not for us to know.
Huh. So I think the question there is like, let's see, is people think to themselves, hey, I was part of the People's Network. Why don't I get to know where that money goes? I'm being intentionally stupid here so that we walk through this thing. Yeah.
It went to a private company that happens to work on the People's Network that happened to, at the time, pay all the developers and receive security tokens in exchange. So that's how they extracted their value from the Helium network. But the company itself and the network are two completely different things. And now 𝗨𝗏 has taken a huge step back from Helium itself. And they're working on being a customer of Helium, but they're really not running the day-to-day of the network anymore.
Right.
It's really the foundation that does that. I believe 𝗨𝗏 gave a grant to the foundation to help them pay for some of those costs, but I don't have that financial information myself. I don't actually know.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's helpful. I mean, it's like saying, hey, 𝗪𝗏𝗀𝘏 has been helpful to the Helium network, and I've certainly built on it, but no one has the right to look at 𝗪𝗏𝗀 Inc.'s financial statements. Like they're my goddamn statements, right?
Right. And if 𝗱𝗏𝗀𝗏 wants to come in and give Golden Hawks $200 million, we'll take it.
Yeah, totally acceptable.
But yeah, it's none of your goddamn business what we do.
All right, so there's the answer to that. Cyber Farm. So good to see you on here, by the way. Good to see everybody. I'm seeing Dumpling Girl. We're giving her a hard time earlier. And Dustin, Ed, good to see you. 𝗱𝗏𝗀𝗏. I think I've seen you were on the last one, right? We saw him and Siegfried kind of cruising back in the comments, making sure everybody gets their shout out. Brian. We talked about Joe, Bo Stewart doing the Ibiza thing. Bo, we keep trying to have a meeting, and I keep dropping the ball. So we got to book some time and figure out what's going on in Ibiza in October. Because clearly Max and I are going to be there. I heard Max doesn't like to party that much. Is not a drinker.
Yes.
That is correct. That is an accurate assessment. All right. Let's see. What else have we got for this week? I'm trying to think of what's going on in Helium. I mean, obviously the huge news is the transition to Solana. I don't think there's any updates there that are, I don't know, material, right? It's just like there's a bunch of people working their asses off to transfer this thing over. It's going to happen in 11 days. I don't see anything could possibly go wrong.
Yeah, so the update yesterday from the readiness call was everything seems to go. I've been on a bunch of those calls, and I've never heard anyone as confident about a date as we did yesterday.
Okay.
And I believe it was Noah at the foundation who said that like extending it a couple of days or a couple of weeks was a huge help for them, and a lot of stuff would have been rushed had they not done that. So yeah, it seems like April 18th is going to be the day. Everything, all the code has passed the audit. Sounds like everything is going really well.
Cool. Super cool. And on April 18th, I believe I will be. Is that next week?
It is not
the week after next. Okay.
Monday after, yeah.
I'll be back from the canyon. So next week I'll be there. I don't think there'll be a state of the network. I'll be out in Blue John Canyon, made famous by Aaron Ralston going out biking there and falling and getting trapped and having to cut off his own arm. So maybe we'll see some blood spots in the side of the canyon wall. Maybe not. Maybe it's washed off by now. It's been a couple of years, but that'll be super cool.
There is an IoT working group call today at I think 2 p.m. Pacific. It's in the events in the Discord.
Okay.
If you want to check that out, I am terrible with time zones. Some good stuff from the mobile working group yesterday. We've working on some cool stuff on signaling which hexes have value, coming up with some burn mechanisms for the mobile token. So a lot of good stuff going, a lot of building going on.
Oh, cool. Let's hit that stuff. Thank you. We got this working group thing, and I haven't paid a ton of attention to the 2 or 3 working groups. There's the POC working group, there's the mobile working group, there's the IoT working group. Is there one more?
No, so it's POC for both IoT and mobile are
okay.
2 of them, and then there's a Solana readiness working group.
And are you on all of those?
Yeah, I'm on all of those.
Okay.
I love doing volunteer work.
At what point are you going to get hired by Helium Foundation or Nova? When does that happen?
Oh God, I don't know. I love doing it for free.
Don't you say that, Max Gold.
I value my time at $0 an hour.
Yeah. Okay, so those 3 things, those working groups were basically experiments by Helium Foundation and the community to see how that whole thing works, right? And I think one of the things that, you and I are joking about it is one of the things I'm seeing, and I've seen for a while, and I think we're going to eventually fix, is that, hey, there is a lot of value you can get out of volunteers, but there's also a lot of sense in saying, hey, how do we compensate people for their time, right? Someone like you who has this deep wealth of experience coming in there, not only do you have the tax incentives background, you got the crypto background, you got the specific Helium background, you've got the mobile and CBRS background, especially from all your work with Pollen. We got to make sure that we compensate that appropriately and don't just like hope that you continue to be generous with your time. So I think that's one of the lessons from out of there. Another one was that we should basically raise the bar for entrance into those things, right? In the first couple meetings, there were some questions that demonstrated that the folks who had volunteered for it, and good on them for volunteering, didn't actually have a good understanding of how the system worked. What are the other things that you've seen since you've been a part of all of these things that are kind of learnings that you're going to pass on to the next generation or next set of these working groups?
Well, so the interesting thing is the intent of the group is for the group to self-govern. So, everyone was elected to a 3-month term. So after the 3 months, and probably 2.5 months is when the planning for this will start happening, is the group will decide like how they want to proceed, whether they want to vote again or how they want to vote, or if, I've suggested a system of everyone in the working group ranks everyone else in their contribution in that working group. And then you take whoever the bottom 3 are, and then you have elections for those 3 positions. The people who get ranked...
Savage, Max! Fucking savage. I like it.
Well, this way you don't have to. If you're contributing to the group, you shouldn't have to worry about like what happens if 10 new people come in and it kills all of the momentum that the group has. And I mean, it should be a relatively easy calculation too, because there are some people who are putting in a lot of time and effort, and there's some people who aren't. So like the group should see that and self-police itself. And then, I mean, if the people who get voted out want to run again, like they're free to do that as well.
Right.
But I think one of the issues with voting for 10 people of ranked choice all at once was like by the time you hit like the 7th or 8th person, you're like, I don't know who any of these people are anymore. So having a more targeted election of like 3 people, and it's similar to what we did with like consensus group. I guess we still do it with the validators today, but with the hotspots, where you have hotspots in the consensus group, and then some of them get kicked out every round, and then you just you cycle through that way. So I think that's a good way to keep the groups up and running.
Yep.
I know you asked a very different question, and I'm giving you a very political answer because I don't want to say bad about anyone, but yeah, no, I think that's how the groups. I'm going to use this like little soapbox that I have to say that that's how I think the groups should proceed in self-sustaining themselves.
No, it totally makes sense. Let's see, and I guess Jay is saying it's like football relegation. Are you getting this thing from SportsMax? I know you love your sports.
I actually, this is going to be it's going to kill my argument. I actually got the idea from Enron. They did this thing called Rank and Yank, where you would rank all your coworkers, and then like the bottom 20% would just get fired, and then they bring in new people fresh out of college.
That's amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so I like the idea, but maybe that's not the best way to sell it. But I think it's a good idea. Anon is saying something about sound. I don't know what the question is about sound. And then Ed is saying he's excited to see hips coming out of the groups. I haven't seen these hips coming out. I know you've talked a little bit about them, Max, but what are some of the hips coming out of these different groups?
So the IoT, Neil wrote a hip, and I'm going to butcher what he's trying to do, but essentially it's you want to reward the best hotspots, and one of the ways to do that is to reward, instead of all of the hotspots that witness a beacon, you want to reward those that witness it the fastest. So the like LoRaWAN, it goes at the speed of light, so we're talking like nanosecond difference between me and someone else like miles away. My backhaul though is going to be millisecond difference. So if you have the best backhaul and the fastest connection with the lowest latency, like you're providing a way better service to the network than someone who just has it off grid using 4G backhaul on top of like a mountain.
Don't you come after me, Max. Don't you come after my hotspots.
So it's like, would you rather that off grid cell backhaul hotspot on a mountain, or the one right next to it on a tower with like a gigabit line connected to it right into a data center? I'm kidding, because that's one of our situations, Nick.
Yeah, no, we're joking for sure.
Not everyone knows where our hotspots are, though. I feel like I need to add that color for the audience. But
yeah. Yep.
So that's one of them, though. Being the first to report, getting a bonus for that. We're looking at some of the issues with oversaturation and cutting off rewards after a certain number. I'm not the biggest fan of that, because as we're diving into the data, like you'll see in Manhattan, for example, there are hexes that have 70 hotspots in a Res 8. But then when you actually drill down into the numbers, the amount that are actually online is the median number is 8. So it's actually doesn't seem to be that big of a problem as it appears. And then if you expand that out to like Long Island, Brooklyn, and into New Jersey, the median number drops down to 2. So that's it's a little bit higher than what you want, but it's not like a huge issue where it's siphoning off rewards. The other thing we're looking at, and it's just difficult to pull all this data, especially when the foundation is busy with the migration, is are those areas actually being over rewarded, or are they being rewarded correctly? And if we invalidate some of these hotspots because they're in an oversaturated area, does that actually allow us to now take HNT, or it'll be IoT tokens, that you would have been earning, or that the network's paying out in one location, and then give it to another location that could use it more? something that we're still looking at. Again, there's a lot of data to pull, and we don't want to just like shoot from the hip here and come up with ideas. We're really trying to, in that group, look at the data and make the correct decisions. So that's kind of what's going on in the IoT. In the mobile, we're doing something that I'm a big fan of. Is we're creating different values for the different hexes for coverage. So, for example, if I'm covering a bunch of area in, I don't know, let's say Kansas, where there's no Helium mobile subscribers, I'm not really providing that much value because Helium
No
mobile,
one's using it.
the
Yeah.
network has one customer, two customers right now, and it's GigSky and Helium Mobile. So if they have no subscribers in those areas, it's kind of worthless. Now, what Helium Mobile, once it launches and has users out there, since they pay two prices for data, they pay one to T-Mobile and then one, which is significantly less, to Helium Mobile, the network, not the MVNO. Very confusing on the wording there. Yeah. So what Helium Mobile will quickly be able to figure out is which towers they are spending the most money on to T-Mobile, and then they can now go and incentivize people to deploy hotspots or 5G radios in those areas, because they immediately now, if someone puts up a radio where there's already data transfer, but to T-Mobile, you can now shrink that cost significantly by having it go to a Helium radio.
Right. Oh,
So
interesting. And this is like a bigger idea too across all crypto projects. Is how do you incentivize the deployment of miners where they're needed? Right. Is like that's
Yep.
the giant picture.
Yep. So one iteration was to stake and a pretty large amount of having that stake by Helium Mobile go towards boosting certain hexes, and then we had to come up with like, well, what if we boost and then there's no data? On the last call, we came up with this idea of maybe instead of staking it and then having it get burned if you don't hold up your end of the bargain, like just burning it. So if you burn mobile tokens and you say that I need downtown Houston covered, I'm going to burn this amount of mobile tokens because it's really valuable for me that there's an incentive for people to put radios there. So let's say it's a one-to-one of what you think the amount of data is going to be there. Even if you double your cost by burning all that mobile, you're still paying $1 per gig compared to like 3 or 4 or 5, depending on the area, to T-Mobile. So it's a huge win for them to do that anyway. So even with the burn, it actually number one, it simplifies it, and number two, it's actually a pretty good deal for Helium Mobile anyway to do it. Boris is on board with it, so it's yeah, certainly something interesting. And another nice thing is the pre-mine. I've been kind of vocal that pre-mining 50 billion tokens with no HNT backing it kind of killed the value of mobile. So by creating ways for people to burn mobile, it's going to help drive up that value again and kind of get us back to an equilibrium where the amount of mobile in circulation has more of a correlation to the amount of HNT in the treasury account.
Okay. Huh. All kinds of shit going on. Love it. Love it. Let's see. I'm going back in the chat. I'm going to hit a couple things. Let's see. What do you think about the MCC decision on dual mining? I don't actually overboosted. I don't know if the official decision has been released yet. I know there's a bunch of talk in the MCC thing. I'm actually curious to hear what Max has to say on it. I should probably shut the fuck up about it because I'm on the MCC. But have you paid attention to this dual mining thing at all, Max?
Other than the announcement on one of the calls, I just don't know how you enforce that. Like,
Right.
if 𝗫𝗓, because you've decentralized the manufacturers of these hotspots with HIP-19, if 𝗫𝗓, for example, wants to go and allow you to do crank KK, I don't know, or whatever on your 𝗫𝗓 hotspot, they can, they have the full ability through 𝗲𝗟 to just send new firmware that allows that. Like, I don't know, like, what can the MCC actually do in that scenario? Can they, like, they can't shut off those hotspots. If they take away the maker keys, which potentially they could, like, I don't know that that's that big of a threat though, because people aren't really buying hotspots anymore anyway.
Right.
You can't turn off onboarded hotspots that people have already, paid money for and onboarded because they're not the ones doing it. And like, if there's a better financial incentive for a maker to start allowing dual mining for another network, like I just don't see how the FCC can actually stop it. I'm interested to hear, what their plans are on doing that, and maybe it's they just won't approve any new manufacturers who want to do that. But the million hotspots and probably 50,000, 100,000 sitting in people's closets that haven't been onboarded yet. I don't know how that has any teeth.
Yeah. Let's come back to that. I just want to hit this one thing really quick. Isn't a 5G unit dual mining IoT and mobile? No, I think dual mining is referring to some cryptocurrency or something happening outside the Helium network. So that is not dual mining. Max, what do you think about dual mining in general, or multi-mining? Right? Do you think are you worried about it hurting the Helium network if Crank, which had the greatest line ever? Now, I say if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So I'm not going to say that the greatest line ever. But what do you think about the vulnerability of the Helium network when it comes to allowing, or whether or not it has the power to? Do you think that's going to be a problem, or you don't see it being a big deal?
There's not many moats, and like if a big guy at Nike wants to come and build a competitor network using the same hardware, you're always susceptible to vampire attacks.
Yeah.
And Germ said, the MCC can revoke future onboarding. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know why anyone would go with another option unless there was like a price difference.
Right.
And maybe Crank KKK can compete with price because the hardware, is essentially vampiring attacking the hardware. But like even then, the Helium cost per data credit is so small that like I don't know how you can compete on price. And then it just comes down to where the data usage goes, right? And like again, I don't see it happening. It's not like you can stand up all these different consoles and all that on Crank so easily. Like there's a lot of development work. There's a bit of modding that has happened with Helium, but yeah, it could happen. I don't know how the other one wins in that scenario.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what happens. I mean, I think building a useful functioning network at any kind of size is so difficult that it sounds cool to be like, hey, we're going to do Helium but better. But actually executing on that is probably super, super difficult. So let's see. You got someone in the background doing dishes. I know it's not someone here. And we're hopeful they're making a cake.
Hold on.
This is Max taking care of business. He's talking to his fleet of housekeepers.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then Ed's thing on the stack ranking thing. So what you had described to me, the what is it, rank and yank thing, is you knock out the bottom three. Ed's saying that is probably not a good idea. Proven to be a clusterfuck. I don't know. I don't know if it's proven to be a clusterfuck. I mean, I don't think it's the thing that took Enron down, and it seems reasonable. But there's got to be some way to say, like, hey, people who are either not contributing or unable to contribute, we shouldn't put them in that position. That's all. I think that's where I'm going with that.
Right. I think it's a little bit different when you're firing people and dealing with unemployment and all the other stuff. Like this is just you can come back to the group literally in the next cycle. It's just like we want to incentivize people to actually do stuff or have some reason why that they aren't in the group anymore.
Yeah.
Or at least prove that they should be.
Yeah, and this is a whole thing like Helium. The reason that Helium exists, and really, or not the reason Helium exists, but what Helium showed us was that there is a way to deploy incentives to ideally, and we haven't gotten it perfect by a long shot, but ideally to provide the best service, you earn the most compensation or tokens or whatever it is, right? And we saw that with off grids, wherever they were, with hotspots up high with appropriate antennas were rewarded way higher than other hotspots. There were a ton of vulnerabilities and flaws in that, but it was also like, oh, this could be how you do it. And I think the same thing applied to, across the system is probably a good idea, is incentivizing performance. Was it called a meritocracy? Something like that?
Yep.
So, okay, Overboosted was kidding about the dual mining. Oh, sorry, dude. I didn't catch that. Sometimes it's like Max was talking about this earlier. Like sometimes the nuance of text doesn't come across. Neil's going to come on eventually, or he was. So it's a long day. Cool. Whenever you're ready, Neil, I'll be here for you. And then I think this is, it's worth putting on here. This project is dead. I've never seen so much red in my area. People don't care anymore. Dude, that's fucking nonsense. It's not even close. So there is, what is it? 41% of hotspots are online was I think the stat that 619 put up. And that seems like, oh my God, that's no hotspots, but that's still, what is it? 400,000 hotspots. I don't know of another network that has that many miners in the real world doing something. So to say this is dead is just, that's a silly FUD thing. And you should check your shit. Let's see, looks like there's some talk in the chat about folks talking about different LoRaWAN networks coming onto Helium, different networks in general. So that's interesting. This was, I've been hearing about this 𝗱𝗫𝗀 dwell time. So I think the 𝗱𝗫𝗀, there's a couple issues with sensors not getting certified on 𝗱𝗫𝗀. I don't know if you've heard about that. I know at some points you were way into radio stuff. Max, or is this not?
I do the economics and the governance stuff.
Okay. And then you got Rob Putt on here, which is he may be the only person in crypto who's got a fouler mouth than me, but he seems very excited to see you. So, and people antenna is still an existing thing, right? You can still order people antennas if you need to.
You can still buy one. There's a whole warehouse and everything.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting, Ed. This idea that lifespan on hotspot is 3 to 5 years. I think Travis told me that Raspberry Pis last for 10 years, but interesting to think that dual mining might decrease that lifespan. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's definitely worth talking about or trying to figure out, because that would be an impact. But I guess that's an only impact to people who are deploying it, right? If you have to buy more hotspots more frequently, it comes out of your pocketbook.
I'm confused how dual mining would hurt that, but I'm sure there's a reason.
Yeah. Let's see. Dan, Vampire's best description I've heard for Crank. Yeah, and I think, I mean, we got to be careful, Max, is that we want all projects to succeed. We've been poking a ton of fun at Crank just because they've made themselves, for us, kind of easy targets. But look, I want all these networks to come on and succeed in a way that improves the health of the overall ecosystem. So no matter what your network is, whether it's something that is just like a funny thing, or you're attempting to do the same thing but better, or you're doing something wildly different, like I want to make sure that message is out there, that we kind of support all of those healthy efforts.
Yeah, but okay, if you're going to create your own network, sure. But if you're just going to try to forcibly fork someone else's network, I don't. Well, another discussion for another day. But
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, you're getting all kinds of questions, Max, about these plates in the background. Is Max's servant called Alfred or Jeeves? We've got a code name for this servant, Max. I don't know if we can use that.
We can leave her out of the crypto world.
Let's see. Oh, John, this is a good one. I think we talked about this last time. Concerns with Amazon opening up Sidewalk IoT network to developers. I think we talked about that a bunch. What was the big takeaway? Did you pay attention to this, Max, or no?
So I mean, Amazon Sidewalk's always been a thing that was coming. I think Travis actually worked on some of Amazon's LoRa stuff at one point.
Okay.
It'll be really good in the suburbs, but Helium kind of is worldwide, and there's plenty of uses for Helium that Amazon may not have good coverage in. I think part of what they're doing, and I didn't read whatever the newest thing that everyone's talking about is, part of what they're doing is they're putting in the Ring doorbells. The other thing is all of the Amazon Echoes have LoRaWAN radios in them, I believe. But the problem with that, and this has been a known thing for a while, is I put my I shouldn't say that word because it'll wake her up. I put my Echo next to my toaster in the back of my kitchen, so that it's there where I want it to play music. Or there's one in my bathroom. It's not set up to have long range like Helium is, because I have no incentive to do that. Right. So I think it'll fall short on a couple of the applications that Helium could really operate well in. I don't know if they're doing BLE or they're doing 𝗲𝗏 or what their plans are right now. But if okay, so the Rob is saying they're doing 𝗲𝗏 radios. The other thing is that could also be a good thing because if Amazon is supporting 𝗲𝗏, then we can get more sensors that want to use 𝗲𝗏. One of the things we saw when we were at CES was when we talked about 𝗲𝗏 to some of these sensor companies. They're like, yeah, but NB-IoT is fine and we know it, and like we'll just stick with that. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but whatever. So if that kind of shifts the discussion about 𝗲𝗏 as a protocol, then I think it could be a net positive.
That's right. So let's dive into that because that was an idea that you had we had talked about that you had come up with was that Helium basically changed the price of a 𝗲𝗏 gateway by causing demand to go up so much, and so many of them got made, and the volume brought the pricing down. So before Helium came along, a 𝗲𝗏 gateway was what, like Gray Hat will know this or Travis will know this, but it's like $800 to $1,000. It wasn't cheap, and now they're what, $100 to $200, something like that. And so what you said is, hey, the same kind of thing will eventually happen for sensors, and we've been kind of kicking around ideas on how to do it. Is that once sensors come down, from 20 or 80 or $200 down to 5 or 10 or $15, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and I kicked around that idea of the IoT network somehow incentivizing people to buy sensors and deploy them, because the same. Yeah, we saw like it's pretty much a 10%. A 𝗲𝗏 gateway is about 10% of the cost of what it was like 4 years ago. And that's because people bought 𝗲𝗏 gateways because they thought they could earn money from doing it. So, that effect has now helped 𝗲𝗏, where if you want to set up your own 𝗲𝗏 network, for example, outside of Helium, you can do that at about a tenth of the cost of what it would have been, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's, it's a very long game that we're playing here. 𝗲𝗏 could work and Helium doesn't, like they're not mutually exclusive. So yeah, a lot of stuff that could happen here, but it's interesting what happens when there's an incentive to buy a technology that no one previously wanted to buy, because now you have these economies of scale that happen and the cost comes down dramatically.
Yeah. Yep. Dude, like all the geeks are going off in chat now. Now that we started talking about LoRaWAN and NB-IoT and the rest of it, I think this is kind of the big takeaway, and I think this is generally like reasonably a direction to go in, although this idea of sidewalk for indoors and Helium for outdoors. I think you just use Helium for everything, but of course I'm a Helium maximalist. But you could think about it in that way because who's saying this overboosted is like Echoes have this single channel transceivers, so it's like the sidewalk thing is it's for you and maybe your neighbors. I think the big thing that will hurt Amazon is that they've made it an opt out network, meaning that you have to go in there and be like, hey, I don't want to share my stuff, so that people are just not forced to share, but are involuntarily sharing. Is that the right way to put it? Probably not.
Oh, see, I think it being opt-out is really good for Helium, because if these if ISPs want to shut down Helium, they can point to we could point to Amazon and say, well, you're not shutting them down; they're doing the exact same thing. And these ISPs aren't going to want to go after Amazon for shutting off people's internet connection because they're rebroadcasting. So by having it be opt-out, it's actually good for Helium.
All right. Once again, you've thought through something more deeply than I have and come up with a reasonable position. Good job, Max Gold. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. I'm just reading through the comments here. I was going back. Ed had one, like Ed is totally against the stack ranking for humans. And he's hit it a couple times. I think it's an interesting idea. I think at the end of the day, like, look, if we have a system that is meritocratic, that will be a stronger and better system than one that's not. But maybe stack ranking isn't the specific way to achieve that.
I also think that like 30% of the people aren't going to want to run for re-election anyway, so it won't actually matter. But I could be wrong.
Yep. Let's see, Brian. Good to see you here. I haven't seen you, but I haven't paid a ton of attention to what you've been crushing over in Helium. But I think this is. There's all these like different questions about what happens with sidewalk and does it work, and if you don't have coverage and you're like, oh, you got to go buy an Echo. The same kind of thing can apply to Helium. But man, a helium hotspot at this point is pretty cheap and easy to install. Unless you're doing it off-grid, in which case it's still kind of expensive and pain in the ass, but yeah. Some discussion about how much the original hotspots were. They were $500. I don't think they were $399. But you got a cookie with them, right?
No, I think the OG, like the first batch was like $800. Because then I remember they went to Rack to make the next batch of OGs, but the first batch of OGs were made by a company in California. I think this one made in California.
Of course, Max has one in the background.
No,
right there.
This one says designed in California, so I think this one was made by Rack.
Okay.
But I know the first one was made by a company in California.
Yeah. Huh.
And that one was significantly more expensive.
Ed's trying to rickroll you. I don't think it's going to work, but it's a funny attempt. Cool. Well, we got a couple minutes left. If there's anything else in the chat, we can hit that. Is there anything else that you got for Helium kind of governance stuff, Max? I know you've been just hammering tongs out. I've been like, dude, let's do Gold Hawk stuff. And you're like, oh, I got this other call. I got this thing going on. So you're, I like taking advantage.
There's a lot of stuff on the governance side that needs to get ironed out. A lot of stuff that we were like, yeah, we'll do this. Jerem says $500. All right, well, I was wrong then. But yeah, no, a lot of stuff that needs to get ironed out that we kind of put aside when after Hit 51 happened, and we never revisited. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on defining what Helium DAO can do, what the sub DAOs have the power to do, what, like, if a sub DAO gets out of line, we voted in the option for slashing from the Helium DAO, but it's like, who has that power? What role does Helium Foundation play in all this? Do we need to set up DAO LLCs for all the different sub DAOs? Like, there's tons of things that haven't happened and loose ends that need to get tied up for this to. And the nice thing about being a bear market is things move a little bit slower right now, so we have time to figure that out.
Yep.
But I could potentially see an issue where 2 years down the line, the market's exploding again, and we have all these questions, and then there's huge dollar amounts, and 50 times the amount of voices in the room trying to decide things, and we'll never get anything decided.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot to iron out and a lot to work out. So let's finish with a couple call outs. Is number one, I will selfishly say I can see there's 29 folks on here and only 10 thumbs up. So I don't fucking like asking for them, but hit the thumbs up, hit the like, or the subscribe, all that crap. Do all like the nice things.
Go subscribe to Deep in State.
Oh yeah, Deep in State is the other channel that Max and I are running. I think we recorded the first episode a week or two ago, and then editing has been more of a pain in the ass than we had initially thought. So it's going to be a week or two late, but once we get rolling, they'll be coming out every week, and that will be updates from all of the Deep in founders across the space. That's pretty exciting.
Yep. Yeah, it's a lot of like little things, getting everything stylistically right at one-time pain points. So we'll be able to be your one-stop shop for all your Deep in news.
Cool. Right on. I see some asshole hit the thumbs down button, so go fuck yourself. How about that? But the rest of you can hit the thumbs up button. And then let's see, what's the other stuff we got going on? If you want to help make this network better, you can volunteer for these groups. You can get into the channels. You can write a HIP. The way to make this network better is to participate in it and to add your voice to it in a constructive way, right? If you're just telling everybody that what they're doing sucks and you don't have a solution, I would go do that somewhere else. But if you do have solutions and you do have ideas, and a lot of you super smart folks who are coming into this, please contribute those into the system, and let's make this thing better together. So yeah. Anything else you got, Max?
No, I'll be in the YouTube channel after this. So.
For the rest of the day. All right. Ed's saying he's mapping right now, so don't forget to map. I think that's a good thing. And Robert Putt is saying don't beg for likes. Yeah, well, every so often, Rob, at the end of a fucking 60-minute show, there's 2 thumbs down, so go fuck yourself twice. No, that's not you, Rob. Whoever the thumbs down are, I got a finger up for you. And with that, on that happy note, I think we can end the show. Max, thanks a ton for coming on, talking governance stuff. I know you're really interested in that. It's helpful to hear your perspective, and I think there's a couple other things we got out of you that were super good. So thanks, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Ripping. We'll see everybody next week. Actually, no, the week after next. Lates.